Okay, so what were the major takeaways from this match? First things first, no player is bigger than the club. Chelsea draw Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. Let's get into it.
And blue is the colour. Essien! Drogba! Lampard! That could be the championship.
Greetings! Welcome back to Couch Critic with me, Dennis P, for what is once again a Chelsea match review, but more specifically, a tactical synopsis of Chelsea's performance against Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. But before I get into all that, fellas, you already know, I do have a sponsor for the show. They go by the name of Major League Socks, and they want you to know, and I also want you to know, that if you ever want to walk in the footsteps of greatness, you know what to do. Hit them up. The link will be in the description. Okay, so first and foremost, I do have to apologize. I did have a scheduled live stream with Jem from GNA TV, and it got canceled on Thursday in light of all the news and turmoil that was surrounding the club. You can forgive me. We were going to be doing the Brighton review on that particular day, but just too much stuff going on to really focus on that. So canceled that. Look for another live stream event with me and Jem later on this week, potentially after the Spurs game in the Cup. That would probably make the most sense. But in this particular match review, we're going to be looking at three different things, as we always do. We're going to be looking at Chelsea's midfield duel of N'Golo Kante and Kovacic, how well they function, what were the strengths in their game. We're also going to look at Chelsea's counter press and pressing against Liverpool, also a very good side at pressing the ball and counter pressing. We're going to look at those two, analyze both sides of the ball. But there really is only one place to start. We're just going to deal with the elephant in the room, the Romelu Lukaku situation with Thomas Tuchel. I don't want to get into the specifics because, as I said, I do like to focus on the tactics more so than the turmoil and whatnot that surrounds the club. But this is just something that we just can't ignore at this point in time. So without further ado, I do want to speak about that and talk about how Tuchel was able to galvanize the squad. Okay, let's deal with first things first. Obviously, this Romelu Lukaku situation has gotten way out of control and has really put a lot of pressure and brought a lot of focus to the club. For many of you that don't know, I'm sure you already do, Romelu Lukaku about 3.5 weeks ago gave an interview to Sky Italia in which he endeared himself to Inter Milan and basically at the same time threw Thomas Tuchel under the bus, disrespected Chelsea Football Club, and showed a large amount of disrespect to the Chelsea fan base as well. And the fallout of that is Thomas Tuchel ended up dropping him for the game today against Liverpool. And they plan on meeting on Monday to discuss their differences and whatnot. And there's a couple things that I want to point out about this whole thing that I think need to be highlighted first. This is an unprovoked interview. Romelu Lukaku requested to speak to Sky Italia about this situation to try and really say goodbye, I guess, in some ways, or hello again to the Inter's fan base. He wanted to let them know how much he loved his time there, and it just kind of like spiraled out of control from there. It was obviously a tactical interview by Lukaku, because with some of the questionings that were asked to him, you could tell that it was a scripted answer. For instance, at the very beginning of the interview asks him, how is he doing? Lukaku says, I'm fine. And then he went on to say, I'm not impressed with the tactics that we're playing right now with Thomas Tuchel and, the situation of them switching tactics and whatnot. And, that was not why I came here. Right off the bat, you can tell that is a weird thing to draw on twice when the question is how you're doing. All you got to say is like, listen, I'm fine. I'm feeling match fit. I want to get back onto the pitch, and start scoring goals for Chelsea Football Club. He then went on to disrespect Thomas Tuchel, disrespect, his philosophy, and, mentioned that he wanted to speak to him about it. And as of right now, I don't think the two of them have even spoken yet. So not only has he disrespected Thomas Tuchel and the club, but he hasn't even spoken to him about it yet. So he hasn't even manned up and said, I'm going to speak to this guy man-to-man, face-to-face, and let him know exactly how I feel about how I'm being utilized in this club. Instead he goes to the media, the Italian media, to leak this ridiculous story about how we're not playing to his strengths, or he was sold a lie, I guess, about how we were supposed to be playing football with Romelu Lukaku. And that to me just shows cowardice. Like instead of like going to the source and speaking to him man-to-man, face-to-face, you're running to the Italian journalists to tell them that you're not happy with what you see. So that in itself is wrong, like just going to the press when you're talking about something that is internal, something that can be worked out internally within the club. So that is the first misstep of Romelu Lukaku. He then goes on to say that, had it not been for the fact that Inter Milan could not afford to give him the wages that he thought he deserved, he would not be at Chelsea. So basically what he's saying is he came to Chelsea for the money. He's not here because he's all proper Chelsea, kiss the badge. And like, none of that matters to him. He's a mercenary who basically came here because he thought this is the best way to increase his financial situation by, basically doubling his wages and coming back to London. So it's not about his love and endearment for this club that we all thought was his boyhood club. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that he was looking for a financial gain, and had it not been for Inter's dire financial situation, he'd probably still be there right now. So put that to bed. It has nothing to do with the fact that Romelu Lukaku has professed his love for Chelsea Football Club. What we did get today from our veterans in the squad was a high-level performance, intensity, desire, and a never-give-up attitude. And that's exactly what it means to be Chelsea. When your back's against the wall, you pull out a performance like that. And I was thoroughly impressed, but I really do want to focus on our midfield because I do think that we had two performances from the likes of Conte and Kovacic that were just scintillating, like next level. They're basically 2v3 the entire match, and they basically bossed the midfield. I mean, for me, obviously Kovacic, that astounding goal, unbelievable finish, falling away, half volley right into the top shelf off the corner. And yeah, he was my man of the match, and not only because he scored, just because his overall play was incredible. I think he won about 6 tackles. It's all over the pitch, dribbling past, blowing up that midfield. And then he's partnered with N'Golo Kante, who we don't really see a lot of them together, haven't the last little while. And the two of them just basically took that midfield and, basically took control of the match. The reason why I thought Chelsea were in the ascendancy for most of the game is because we had control of the midfield from pretty much 80% of the game, to be honest. And that was mainly down to the fact that the likes of Fabinho, Henderson, and Milner were just no match for N'Golo Kante and Kovacic. They provided so much energy in that midfield that couldn't be rivaled, and they just couldn't live with them. There's so many times you saw Chelsea, and I'll get into that when I speak about how Chelsea is pressing and counter-pressing the entire match, but there's so many times where those three in particular were so timid and scared to really press up because they knew that Kovacic and Conte had the beating of them, and they'd have to do a lot of running to get back. So a lot of what we saw with Chelsea breaking their press and giving them something to really think about when we were on transition and working the counter, it was because they couldn't deal with the pace and power that Kovacic and Conte brought the entire match. And if we get those types of performances from those two, there's not very many midfields in Europe that can deal with it. I did notice that once we did go with the midfield three, the game did slow down. And I feel like that was basically down to the fact that we were reconfiguring our midfield, and sometimes you lose control of the game when you try and rejig the parts that much. And to be honest with you, for the majority of the season, when we have gone with a midfield three, it's left a lot to be desired. I do prefer Chelsea playing more with 1 6 and 2 8s rather than 3 6s with Kovacic, Jorginho, and Conte, just because you just lose the thrust in the midfield, the ability to really advance the ball quickly and get into the final third. I just feel like a lot of the times we're just really slow and labored when we go to that midfield three, and we don't really necessarily understand how we want to attack teams and how we want to break the press effectively. I think that was largely the problem when the last 20 minutes of the game, when Liverpool were a little bit more in the ascendancy, and Chelsea were kind of slowing down a bit. Number one, we didn't have a target man to just bypass the midfield and just build our attacks further up the pitch, but we also just didn't have a means to break their press as effectively as we were before. But I will get into that obviously with the next portion of this video, but I do think that the midfield three, for whatever reason, hasn't really functioned to the liking that you would think that having those three players of that caliber on the pitch at the same time would do. And it's mainly just down to we're just missing one element, just somebody that can really, really like get forward, stitch together passes and, be the conduit for the attack. If you're going to play with a midfield three, you need somebody to be that. And, I guess Kovacic is the closest to that. And he was very, very, very good today. As I said, he was my man of the match. But, as the match wears on and, he starts to fatigue a little bit more, he loses the endeavor and thrust to get forward. And, I feel like when you bring in another midfielder, it almost just slows it down that much more. And, unfortunately, that was the case today. But overall, I mean, I would probably say that, like, Conte was probably a 9 and Kovacic a 9.5. The pass from Conte to get Pulisic in behind the defense was just beautiful. I think he used the outside of his boot to curl it around. Unbelievable execution there. And just, for the entire match, like, our midfield was so aggressive. Like, Kovacic and Conte were constantly in that final third, pressed so far up the pitch and, really threatening their box as well, not necessarily within the 18, but definitely just on the outskirts of it, like really pressed up high. And for large chunks of that game, Liverpool had a lot of problems with it. Not only did we press up, press up the Kovacic and Conte, but you saw Alonso giving us unbelievable box presence. You saw the likes of, not so much Azpilicueta, but once we switched to formation and we went to Pulisic was right up there as well. There was times where you see Chelsea attack with 4s, 5s, and 6s in that Liverpool box. And with the way that they're defending so narrow, like, obviously, once we shifted the ball, once we got into the final third and we shifted the ball back to the opposite flank, you found whoever the attacker was in so much space. A lot of the times you found Alonso, like we're attacking down the right and we shifted it back to the left. You saw Alonso in acres of space, just acres of space that, on a better day and another day, he probably would have taken advantage of and probably scored. But, it happened time and time again, just their fullbacks were just not switched on whatsoever. And, we definitely gave them more to think about in the final third than we had a lot of teams in the last few games in particular. I think it just comes down to the fact that, Thomas Tuchel was extremely aggressive this match. He took the handbrakes off. Everyone was on attack mode. And, that is Chelsea at its best. That is us playing to our strength. That is us exalting our strengths rather than, trying to mask our deficiencies. We were pressed up. We had about 4 or 5 guys right in the box at all times, and it gave them a lot to deal with. And on another day, that midfield would have probably won us the game. Just chance after chance after chance, but unfortunately we just couldn't take the one opportunity that would have pushed us over the top. But hats off to Tuchel, hats off to the midfield, hats off to Kovacic, my man of the match. And I thought both teams did a good job at pressing, but I thought that Chelsea did a great job breaking Liverpool's press. Like, the entire match, we put them under unbelievable pressure and stress with the way that we were able to just orchestrate our counter-pressing and our ability to break their press. Now, obviously, the strength of Liverpool's press is always coming from the front with the likes of Salah, Jota now, and Mane, and they put a tremendous amount of pressure on your back line, so you obviously need to have guys that are very comfortable on the ball, very composed and in possession, and clearly Chelsea have that with the likes of Thiago Silva, Rudiger, and even Chalobah. I'm not going to really comment on the mistake that he made for the goal because clearly he's just nursing his hamstring and he didn't trust it enough to go and use his leg there to just clear the ball. So, mistakes happen. He's a young boy. He's going to learn from that. But generally, he's usually pretty good on the ball. And, that was the reason why I think that we were so effective at breaking their press, because usually what happens is they put any back line under so much pressure that they're hurried to make that pass into the second wave. And then, either the pass is a little bit wayward and they produce a turnover that way, or, their midfield three is just so aggressive on winning that ball, winning it back, that, the midfield usually crumbles. But in this game in particular, Chelsea was just so composed and breaking down the press, and obviously weren't hurried, weren't really feeling the pressure that you normally would get from that first wave, to the point where they were able to advance it out to the flanks to one of our wing backs. And once we got it there, it was an easy situation where either, the likes of Mount and or Pulisic would be the release ball over the top, or you bring it infield to where Conte and Kovacic were just bossing their midfield three. So anytime we moved it infield, you saw Conte and Kovacic were able to just dribble past whoever it was, whether it be Milner, whether it be Henderson or Fabinho, or we would either, once we got it out to Alonso, we would be able to advance it further up the pitch into the likes of Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, Pulisic. My preferred choice would be for Chelsea to work it infield into the N'Golo Kante and Kovacic, because they were able to drive the ball into the midfield and move it faster. But once we launched it further into space to the likes of Kai Havertz, he did struggle with holding up the ball a bit. No fault of his own, of course. Very difficult battle with the likes of Van Dijk and Konate. But again, this is just us breaking the press and getting into our transition and then obviously into our offensive flow. I thought Chelsea were excellent at it. And then, let's be honest, Liverpool were not very good today. Not very good today. And not only retaining possession, but also, handling the pressure that Chelsea just piled on them in droves, especially in the early stages of that match. Granted, Liverpool did find themselves up 2-0 really early, but really Chelsea were in the ascendancy for most of that half, and it was mainly because our pressing and our counter-pressing, our ability to hem them in was just fantastic. I mean, there are portions in the second half of that game where I thought Chelsea were playing against, somebody like Burnley, the way they had Liverpool just camped out in their half for large stretches, like Chelsea just really using their high press to an incredible advantage, and we almost scored from it as well. Like I remember the one instance where the ball was shifted out to the left and the cross came in and Pulisic got on the end of it, and man, I was almost certain that was going in. Unfortunately, it didn't, but that whole sequence there, the sequences leading up to that, where Chelsea were just dominant. And again, on another day, who knows what would have occurred there had Chelsea taken these opportunities to really hurt them in the final third. That's still where we kind of struggle. I still think that Chelsea are, they do have the ability to create a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities, but it's just taking them that seems to be plaguing this team and has been for a number of years right now. Until we can do that effectively, the amount of pressing, counter-pressing, and the pressure that we put on teams is really not going to amount to much, because we really just got to start taking advantage of these opportunities. And, when we get into 1v1 situations, just no mistakes, just be relentless and clinical when we get there. But again, I really did think that was like the staple in the game, Chelsea's ability to press the ball effectively, break the press effectively, and of course counter-press effectively. But I do think I'm going to wrap it up there. Chelsea, unfortunate not to take all 3 points at Stamford Bridge against Liverpool. Bitter foes. Probably the team that I hate to play the most. I just don't like Liverpool. I know everyone has their London rivals, the Arsenals, the Tottenhams, Man United, if you go that way. But for me, it's Liverpool. That's the one team I just can't stomach. That's the one for me. So I really wanted this one, and I thought that we had opportunities to take it to them. But the fight back in this game was incredible. When we went down 2-0, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was like, yo, let's just start focusing on cups now, because it's pretty much a done deal right now. But the fight back and the spirit in the club, I really feel like this club, this team is taking on the personality of the manager, Thomas Tuchel. Just did not quit, kept on pressing them high, and were able to, capitalize on some errors from Liverpool to, really, get ourselves back in the match. And on another day, like I said before, I thought we could have won it. I don't want to talk about this Lukaku thing much more. Like I said in the video, I really do think that the next step is for us to just divorce ourselves from the idea that he is proper Chelsea, just leave that alone. He's a guy that's come in here, he's a mercenary, he's come in here, he's just got to score goals for this club. That's all we need him to do right now. Everything else doesn't matter, he can talk all he wants. As long as he delivers on the pitch now, like he has the last 2 games, that's all that matters. I don't need to hear anything more about this, Thomas Tuchel will do what Thomas Tuchel needs to do, whether it means he's going to bench him for a few games, take him out of the line of fire, take him out of the limelight, give him a chance to really rethink what it is to be Chelsea, what you're at this club right now, rethink that. And, bring him back in when you feel like the emotions have calmed down a bit and like he's ready to contribute to a winning team. That's what it's all about. I don't care where your allegiances are. You know, we went through a spell with Eden Hazard where almost every week he was talking about how much he loves Real Madrid, and you know, goes to show you the grass is always greener, right? Like, he goes to Real Madrid and he's basically just shit the bed there. You know, he's begging to come back to Chelsea now because he knows this is where his home is. You know, this is what he's about, man. It's about Chelsea, man. It's not about like going, you know, to some like whack ass La Liga team thinking that, you know. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. It doesn't matter. We move. We got Tottenham in the cup next. What are we going to do? You know, what are we going to do? We got Antonio Conte. Again, the turmoil, you know what's going to happen. They're going to be talking about Lukaku. They're going to be talking about Conte. They're going to be talking about the relationship and all of that. But none of that is going to matter once the whistle blows and we're in between the lines and there's 90 minutes to play for it. You know, Chelsea, obviously, you know, we're at the point right now that it is a cup competition now. We're looking at the cup competitions. It's a semi-final against a bitter rival once again. And you know Conte is going to want to get one over on Chelsea and the board and whatnot. You know that, you know, it's going to be a tightly contested affair, you know. It's a London derby, obviously, and, you know, the supporters are going to be up for it, both sides, you know. Very, very, very much so. But again, like I'm looking at it like this: we're Chelsea, man. You know, we've definitely used situations like this before to galvanize the squad, and I don't think this is going to be any different. You know, this turmoil and whatnot has come at the wrong time, but at the same time, it is the right time. You know, there's no time like the present to take this opportunity to really refocus the team and dedicate them to what is really important. You know, so you know we saw that performance today from Liverpool. These guys. We were able to get performances out of so many different members of the team. Obviously, Kovacic returning to form. You know, Conte showing us why he's one of the best midfielders in the world right now. And, you know, even the likes of Alonso, like, I mean, people hate what you hate if you want to hate, but, like, I don't think he had a bad game. Sure, you know, the Salah goal was kind of, you know, somewhat down to him, but at the same time, you know, overall, I thought Alonso wasn't that bad. You know, like easily a solid 7 out of 10 if you ask me. You know, he's definitely threatening their box a fair bit, and he didn't really give away the ball a lot of the times either. So, you know, I thought he was decent, and if he can build on that performance now, again, we're gonna have to go back into we're gonna have to look at that position though going forward though, because you know the transfer window's open right now. We don't have another left back at the club. You know, what are we gonna do? Can't run this guy into the ground. He can't run as it is. So we're gonna have to look and bring somebody in. So as I said before in previous videos, this is the period where I am going to be monitoring whether or not this board is committed to winning, is committed to Thomas Tuchel, is, you know, what are their aspirations for this season? Because clearly we have our 2 first choice wingbacks out of the lineup for a long-term situation. And if you're serious about contending, you need to find replacements for those positions. And I'm sorry, bringing back Emerson or, you know, bringing in an academy kid is not, you know, it's just not suitable enough. It's not adequate. We need to find somebody that can deputize at both positions and play it at a high level if we want to continue on the run of form that we're currently in. Let's not forget, as much as like there's doom and gloom in December, we've only lost 2 games all year. You know, like we only lost 2 games all year. We're in the semifinals of the Carabao Cup. FA Cup's about to start, and we're obviously in the knockouts of the Champions League. There's still lots to play for, if not the league. You know, so they have to show us that they are as committed as we are, as Thomas Tuchel is, to winning trophies. So until then, guys, I'm looking forward to this game on Wednesday. But you guys know what to do. We always move as a unit. It's always about the club. It's always about the badge. Keep the blue flag flying high, and up the Chelsea. Peace.